Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to the channel. So the topic of today's video is going to be on a procedure that you're going to do whenever you are shooting these types of rifles, being it a gas gun, a bolt gun, or realistically any type of precision roll weapon. Now, the amount of deviation that you have is going to vary depending on the rail that you have, the gun that you have, the setup that you have, barrel. A lot of things are going to play into it. But most setups, and I say most, I'll touch on that here in a minute, are going to have some sort of deviation that you're going to notice from the different procedures, and that is on the loading your bipod. Now, what do I mean by loading your bipod? I see a lot of guys, they'll get into a shooting position and they'll place the legs of their bipod, they'll either dig them into the ground or they'll place them against a barricade or a backstop or something in front of the rail and push forward on it and kind of lock into the gun. And what that is doing is that is helping the individual to be able to control recoil a little bit better. And while there is a use case for that, dependent on the situation, dependent on the size of the target, how fast you're having to engage said target, that is a technique that you can and should be using. But you need to understand what is going on within your system and know the changes that you're going to actually impart in your zero whenever you are loading your bipod or shooting off of different positions. Now, another position that I'm going to touch on here is also shooting off of a rear bag or a bag. So something like this Armageddon gear bag here, as well as loading your bipod or setting your bipod up towards the rear of your rail. Well, let's go ahead and go over the bipod rear and where that is useful. A lot of you guys that are up in the mountains, you're shooting at any types of high angles, your guys that are out in the Mormon sniper country and stuff like that, where you're able to shoot at a downward angle, a lot of times putting the bipod towards the rear of the gun is going to be an option for you. Or even if you have an arc rail where you're able to actually slide it, or a pick rail where you can decide more or less where you want the bipod, you need to understand that even with that, there is going to be a shift. Now, worth noting that in this video, whenever I do the testing, the bipod is towards the front. For the first portion of the video, when I actually show like the zeroing, the bipod is in a neutral position. The pressure that I'm placing on the bipod when it is bipod rear is the exact same. I am not loading the bipod forward. I am not pulling it to the rear. I'm just resting on the bipod itself. So just keep that in mind whenever you're seeing this as well, that no matter what you do, there is going to be a variation, and that if you load the bipod towards the rear, there's going to be even more of a change imparted into the system versus the bipod being towards the front, where you're naturally going to zero the gun at. Now, the bag is one of the least changes that you're going to have. It is something that I've noticed across the board with every different rail type. It's the least amount of changes that you're going to have. Now, the setup that we're using here for today, so people can't say, oh, you're using a trash rail, because I know some people might think that if I come out here with like a PSA rail, which yes isn't a very good rail, or like a BC, some kind of trash rail that's out there that's really flimsy and it's not going to have any kind of rigidity to it. I'm using a Knights Armament URX 3.1 13.5 inch rail on an 18-inch barrel. Now, as I alluded to before, most systems are going to notice this massive amount of difference. I have a prior video out where I go more in depth, and I actually showcase this on multiple different rail systems. And just to kind of give you guys the TLDR of that video, the only two rails that I have used so far that did not have any deviation no matter what you did on it was one, the Ridgeline Defense LPR. There was absolutely no deviation within that rail system, and I'm kind of thinking it's because of how they set up the front portion of the rail here with the barrel nut, and also the rigidity of the rail having the ARCA attachment towards the bottom. And two, a PRI, the carbon fiber rail with the swan rail attached to the top of that. I'm thinking that the reason that you didn't notice as much of a deviation with that is because that swan rail bridges the gap between the upper receiver and the rail here, and it provides a little bit of rigidity, preventing it from flexing upwards, and that is also something that helped that individual's rifle to not experience any deviation. But we have shot this with Geissele, BCM, Knights Armament, Midwest Industries, Troy, tons of different rail systems out there that we have done this with, and pretty much all of the other ones, there is some deviation. Now, a rail I would like to try is like the BCM Raider rail, which is a very similar rail to this, but they say it's a little bit more rigid for night vision, so you're not going to have as much flex. I think that might help. Also, the Midwest Industries Night Fighter rail, also a more rigid rail, but I would venture to say that more likely than not, rails with longer, larger barrel nuts are going to have a lot less of this variations than rails like this URX3 here, or a similar setup rail with just a standard size barrel nut. So without further ado, guys, enough talking. Let's go ahead, let's get to the range, let's shoot this, and we'll come back to the table and talk over our results. All right, we're going to start in the bipod neutral position, meaning I'm not implying any forward, rearward, or any kind of force onto it. I'm kind of just letting the rifle rest and sit in its natural point, not doing any kind of input onto the front end of the gun itself. I will be adjusting the back end of the bag, but nothing is going into the front end. This is 100 yards, parallax. This is 0 to 50. So it might be a hair off, but you're looking at deviations in the 0. All those look relatively centered. I did adjust the 0. I came down 1.5 minutes, or 1.25 minutes rather, based off what the ballistic computer told me to do. All right, now we are going to load the bipod. So I'm going to dig these legs into the ground, and I'm going to apply forward force on it and lock this thing in place. So that's with forward force on the bipod. I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to move to bipod rear now. And again, it's going to be in a neutral position. I'm not going to load it. But we're doing bipod rear. This is a little less stable. Again, it's a little less stable, and I am pushing these groups a little bit faster, so they may not group as good as the first one where I was neutral and actually trying to really group the gun. But let's go ahead, grab the my chest rig right there, lay my bag on it, and we're going to do bag. And you may be asking yourself, why would I do bipod rear? Why would I do this? Why would I do that? A lot of people will load their bipods in order to get faster follow-up shots. Downrange, I'm guilty of doing this as well. And a lot of people also will shoot off of a bag on top of running off of a bipod. So they'll zero off a bipod and they'll go off of a bag. And this is also something that if you're shooting distances, you need to understand the differences of running a bag versus running a bipod, because okay, these matches you're running a lot of bags like this. So to also give you an idea of what the bag is, I'm going to just take my stock out of here as well. Again, not as stable. I don't have a rear bag back here, so the group will open up a little bit because of stability, but I'm also not really trying to shoot tight groups for these. Just more or less give you guys an idea of the deviation that you're going to actually experience. So let's go ahead, let's go get the target, let's go back to the table, and let's talk about it. All right, guys, and the results are in. So let's go ahead, pull up the target here, give you guys an idea of what it is we're looking at. You should have seen these shot already. So starting up with the neutral position up here with not loading my bipod at all. So this is more along the lines of what this gun shoots as far as groups goes. I'm usually getting about 3/4 to 1.5 MOA out of this gun, so it's kind of varying in there in places, and you can see it in areas like with the loading the bipod, for instance. It shot a 1.42 MOA group, so again, keeping in with the consistency of this rifle here. And starting off with a neutral position, you will notice that my variations that I've got here, my point of reference, this is going to be your baseline essentially, is I am 0.03 inches low, so I'm essentially zeroed. I can't adjust that out of the gun at all. And I am 0.3 inches left, so I'm a little bit left of my zero for this group, and I do know that I need to come right 0.1 or right a quarter minute, but that's kind of is what it is. So keep that in mind, that variation whenever you're seeing these. The left variation isn't as much so opposed to whenever you get all the way over here to the bipod rear where it actually shifted right, and again, that's on par with what I've seen in other results as well. So 0.74 MOA, 0.3 inches low, 0.03 inches low, and 0.3 inches left, so essentially zero, pretty good zero. Moving on down to loading the bipod. So you notice here I had a nice consistent load on the bipod. There wasn't any variation in it. I mean, you're able to get fairly consistent with that and get repeatable results if you practice it. But you'll see I got a 1.42 MOA group, and these are shot at 100 yards. And you'll notice here that we are 1.87 inches low now because of loading the bipod. The difference is that you have that is roughly 2 MOA low. So say you're shooting at distances like 500 yards and you're loading your bipod. You're looking at almost a 10-inch difference in your drop there. Your rounds are going to be dropping 10 inches lower versus your normal reference with any kind of a neutral zero. And again, that's something you're going to have to shoot and learn to keep in mind. So if you do have to load your bipod, that is something that you're going to want to take into account. You need to go about 10 inches higher roughly, depending on the distance you're going. But again, this is something that is repeatable off of these guns. Now, moving on over to the other two options. This is not something that I have been able to repeat quite as well. And the groups opening up here is a combination of both myself just trying to rush, get through the shots. I didn't want to sit here and have a 10-minute video of me shooting, as well as the inconsistencies that you're going to have in the rifle placement and the bag placement. Whenever you lay a rifle on a bag, the bag's not going to be laying the exact same way every time. The rifle may not be laying the exact way every time. And that coupled with the flexing that you're having going on inside of the rail system, this is with free float rails, you are going to be having this variation happen down range. So I had 2 shots that went high and then 3 shots that went low. The basic mean center of my group is the base of this pasty right here, which is about a half-minute low, which again is on par for the bag. The bag is the least amount of variation that I have noticed doing these different types of shoots. And then lastly, bipod rear, again, a pretty good movement from what we had noticed before, but keep in mind, bipod rear, this is with a neutral shooting position. I am not actually loading the bipod, and it's still shifted about an MOA, 1.1 MOA, or 1 inches low of the point of aim and what I am normally zeroed at. If you were to actually load this bipod whenever you are shooting with the bipod rear, and if you guys have ever done any kind of high angle shooting, you will know that you're almost always going to be loading the bipod because you're shooting at a downward angle. One, the weight of the gun actually pushing forward on it is going to cause some variation, and also you as the shooter pushing forward, you're going to cause variation, and that is also something that is going to change downrange. Of course, your saving grace being that you're not, generally speaking, you're not going to be shooting as far of a distance at a downward angle. A lot of the downward shots, well, I mean, if you're up in like fucking Himalayas or some shit maybe, but generally speaking, you're not going to be shooting as far. So it's not going to be something that's as important, and this is just kind of a data point for you guys. It's not something that's going to apply in 99.9% of situations. It is more or less just for this niche situation where you'll need the bipod closer to you because you have to shoot at a high angle shot. But again, guys, I don't want to keep you guys here a super long time, just kind of going over the differences and loading your bipod and variations with that. I just want to give you guys another tips video, and it's something that you need to keep in mind, and it's something that I encourage you to actually go out and practice. A lot of times I'll see guys struggling to get a zero on their gun, and this is actually a byproduct of that. You'll have somebody, they'll go out one day and they'll zero their gun, they'll get the gun zeroed in and it's nice and dialed in, and they'll go out another day and it's in a completely different spot. And the reason being is they're not as consistent with loading their bipod with one range trip versus another one, and a lot of them are trying to kind of push forward into the barricades. So when you guys are zeroing, I encourage you to stay in a nice neutral position. Just get tight into the gun, like don't let the gun kind of hang loose, but get a nice neutral, comfortable position and zero your gun, and then let everything else happen after that, and figure out where it is your rifle is impacting and what your gun is doing with a given procedure. So if you guys do have any questions, drop them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate y'all watching.